I think I figured out the technical difficulties, but let's make sure real quick. Gotta see what if this stream is playing. Okay, looks like it is. So let's just jump straight into it. Welcome back to the 6th episode of Shots on Target with your host, Brad Betts, where we analyze the world of football from the goal market perspective for all the top matches around the world. Today is Monday, September 2nd. We're coming off a really great week. Our plays of the day went 6-1 last week. All 3 cash on from our Fridays, episode 5 in England, Germany, and Sweden. Today we're going to highlight the English Premier League, followed by a best bet for today, and then we're going to open up the floor to anybody who's able to find us. Brad Morris, I appreciate you. Russell, I appreciate you guys as well. I need to get into this thing because I just closed out of it. But the craziest issue was I was connected to my gym headphones, which are way down in the car, through my Bluetooth. So for some reason, it was playing through that. Had no idea. But right now, in the Premier League, it's insane with some weird scoring. We're going to jump into the Premier League, look at it from a historical perspective before we jump over to our best bet. Clicking on episode 6 finally. Looks like you can hear me now, which is good news. So, without further ado, the Premier League in 2012 to 2022 to 2023, that's 2 seasons ago. Not great scoring. 52% for the over 2.5, 52% for both teams to score. But last season, it really ticked up. Both teams to score from 2023 to 2024 kicked up to 61% for both teams to score, 64% for the over 2.5. Over 1.5 hit at 86% of the matches. One team hit 2 goals, so over 1.5 in the team total hit at 76% last season. That's 3 out of every 4 matches. That's really high scoring for one team total. The home team scored in 83% of the time, whereas the away team scored in 67% of the time. So let's take a look this season. Right now, through 3 weeks, 30 matches, the Premier League is hitting both teams to score at 60%, hitting the over 2.5 just at 46%, less than 50%. That is not a high rate. The over 1.5, though, so just straight over 1.5, is at 90%, which is higher than last season's. Even with less scoring overall, we're still seeing 2 goals managed to come in the game, but just not necessarily that 2.5 just yet. The home team scored at 76%, which is down from 83, almost 10%, so 7% correlation. That's a big deal. And then the away team actually has scored in 83%. That's a 16% uptick. This could be, based on numbers we see here, it could just be a product of matchups so far. Who's playing home, who's playing away. So we don't necessarily want to put all of our chips into these baskets of numbers, but it is interesting to notate. Week 1 of the Premier League saw just 19 goals, as you can see here. Both teams to score at 4-6 and 3-10. Ugly start to the season. Week 2 ticked up. Went from 19 goals to 30 goals. But the both teams to score in the over 2.5 still stayed at 5-5 apiece. However, in week 3, same amount of goals as week 2, but both teams to score went from 5-5 to 9-1, and the over 2.5 went from 5-5 to 6-4. So a significant uptick, especially from both sides scoring, as you saw with those previous numbers. The away team is scoring at a much higher rate statistically than they normally do. So these are numbers that you want to be mindful of going forward. But overall, the BTTS this season is hovering around the same number. Over 2.5 is massively down. The BTTS and over 2.5 correlated together last season was at 52%. Now that's down to just 36%. Home teams are only hitting 2+ goals in just over 33% of their matches. That's a low figure. The same amount of home team 2+ goals as away team 2+ goals have happened this season, both at 11 and 30. Again, it could be down to matchups, but what we do want to pay attention to is only 2 of 30 matches this season have seen both teams score twice. We've only seen 6 of the 30 matches this season go above over 3.5. So we're really wanting to shy away from doing a double team total type of bet or an over 3 Asian total. Right now, those should be off limits with your betting. So when you look at it from top to bottom, the correlations are basically total amount of goals overall has decreased, but the disbursement of those goals has increased. So some away from the home teams, some given to the away teams. Not overall too much amount of data that can give us a total picture of what's happening this season, but thus far what I've seen is a little bit more of a conservative play. I don't know if that's just because it's the beginning of the season, but last season it felt like teams just came out guns blazing, going for goals. Nobody was really caring about what was coming into the net. This season it feels like a lot of those formations are a little bit more defensive. You're seeing a little bit less of that open play, run and gun style. But again, it's just 3 weeks into the season. Things can change. We're just finally getting that transfer market settled so we can get these teams all together, start playing with one another, and start to see what team performs and where they do it. So if you have any questions on the EPL, take a look at a previous video I did for the entire season. I dropped that in the comments when I posted the breakdown for this live video today. So get in there, learn a few things, but also we want to take a little bit of information and we're going to look to apply it. But we have a lot of days before that comes to fruition. Injuries can happen over this international break like crazy. So before you make bets next week, make sure that all of your players have come back safe and sound. And now what everybody wants to get to, again, we have a light slate. So there's a couple matches before we get into, there's a couple matches that are very interesting that have caught my eye. Fall, I can't remember how to say it, in the Israel Leumit and or National League, depending on what your book has. That one looks like a very interesting look on both teams to score, but that number's minus 200, ugly. It's moved up overnight. If it drops, maybe you could look to that. There's two matches in Norway that are very interesting. I've liked to bet on Start, S-T-A-R-T, that is a team. They've seen a lot of goals, as well as Ranheim. They've done pretty well. There's two matches that I'm looking at, but nothing definitive because those lines are at BTS over 2.5, like minus 170, minus 180. Unplayable, very similar to what Hacken is. If those lines come down, maybe you look to attack those. But without further ado, our play of the day, we're headed to Canada. Halifax, Canada, to be specific. HFX, Halifax Wanderers, come in, scoring in 15 of their last 18. But when they're at home, which they are today, they score in, or have scored in 20 of their last 22. They've conceded in 8 straight and 24 of their last 28 matches coming into it. They've hit both teams to score in 12 of their last 15 matches, and they're taking on a York United out of Toronto squad, who scored in 25 of their 32 matches. That's pretty solid numbers. And they've conceded in a whopping 29 of 34. Regular production. They've hit both teams to score coming into this match in 15 of their last 20 matches that they've played away from home. And the one thing that separates it from the others is the matchup history. In 3 straight matches, both teams found both teams to score. So my favorite play of the day, Kylie, just in time, my favorite play of the day is that Halifax Wanderers in the Canada Premier League, Halifax Wanderers versus York United out of Toronto, at both teams to score, and I got that at minus 130. Again, I want you to play this because I like this play, but we always want to make sure that when we're on international break, those 1-unit plays become half-unit plays. The variance, the rotation, the mindset of these players, everything is off. Even these players playing today know that there's an international break and everybody is leaving for Europe to go play in the Nations League and all these other various tournaments throughout the world. This game's at 2 p.m. this afternoon, 2 p.m. Central Time. And this is actually on television. I believe it's on FS1, so one of the few matches you'll be able to watch today. But this Canada Premier League, it isn't a high scoring where you're going to see 5 or 6 goals, but you do regularly see the both teams to score and over 2.5 come in. But today, I like that both teams to score better. This concludes our episode today of Shots on Target. Not as much to choose from, but we're going to come back tomorrow where we take a deep dive, just like we did the Premier League, into Germany's Bundesliga. Hopefully find us a best bet for tomorrow. But what we're looking for is leading up to those Thursday matches in the Nations League. That's where I think if we're going to find any value in the international market, that's where it's going to be. Again, thanks again for coming to our 6th episode of Shots on Target with your host, Brad Betts, Russell Johnson, Brad Morris, Jeff Stewart, Kylie Reynolds, more and more, Nick Mace. Thank you guys so much for coming. I know how difficult it was to get in today's episode. We're going to make sure we're off the Bluetooth tomorrow, so there's going to be no issues with the headphone game. But again, this concludes our 6th episode of Shots on Target on Monday, September 2nd. Happy Labor Day. And again, I'll catch you guys tomorrow.